Last time I was here, this was my first conference as GitHub CEO. It was 2022. I was prepped for weeks. I was nervous. I was jet lagged, but I was also happy to be back in Berlin. This is my hometown. I grew up on the east side in Berlin-Marzahn. I haven't lived here for more than 20 years, but it's always so exciting to be back here. And then I stood here on the stage, and of course, we wanted to do a live demo, right? Like, there is no developer conference, no real developer conference without live coding. And I had a live demo of GitHub Copilot, and as Sead mentioned, it was still in private preview at that point in time. So here's me, coding live on stage. It was a simple demo. Copilot at that point in time was just auto-completion after all, but of course it failed, right? The demo monkey came and failed, and you can kind of see me awkwardly figuring out, what's happening. Now, what didn't work was not Copilot. Copilot was actually fine. What didn't work was the HDMI connection. And so the crew came on stage and fixed it all within a couple of minutes, and I think the crowd was like rooting for me so that it works. And after that, but what this shows us is that with all the technology, with all the cool stuff in our lives, often the basics still don't work, right? You still have to demand or remind your kids that they have to empty the dishwasher, and they're like, why the hell is there no robot in our lives that does that for us, right? When was the last time you were on a Zoom or Team call and you talked for 5 minutes and somebody then told you you were muted, right? The AI still can figure that out. Anyway, so I thought, let's try that again and see if I can do a quick demo right at the beginning of this keynote. Right before I came on stage, I got a ping from a coworker. After all, I'm a developer myself, and he wants me to migrate some tests over, and I hope HDMI works this time, and I can show you how quickly I can do this now with the help of AI. So let's see. Let's get over to the demo laptop, which shows me trees. So the first thing that didn't happen is that it stayed awake. Let's see. Password. Oops. Password 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, password 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe that's a 0 here. Password 1, 2, 3, 4. This is Christopher. There we go. This was not in the rehearsal. Anyway, so here's a GitHub issue, right? Like that's how we start our day at GitHub. Our engineers go to GitHub and pick up an issue. And you can see, I'm supposed to migrate from unit tests to PyTests, and Christopher gave me, this description. Okay, I need to update the requirements text and create a new folder, and then migrate my tests over. And raise your hand if you would love doing this. Raise your hand if you actually love writing unit tests. I mean, I sure don't. In fact, when I work on my own hobby projects, there's one. If I work on my own hobby projects on a weekend, I never write any unit tests, right? And I never submit a pull request for code review. I just vibe code it with or without AI. But here's something that real commercial software teams have to do to ensure the trust in their own deployments and with their customers. But I really don't feel like this morning. And so what I can do now is I can just go here into the assignees and assign it to Copilot. And what happens now is that Copilot, picks up this issue, it spins up a virtual machine, it clones the repo. It actually shows me, with this eye emoji here, that it has picked up this issue. And you see, it mentioned already a work in progress pull request. So what it does now, it analyzes the repository, it takes my issue and all the comments, and it starts working on this migration. Now this takes a while, so in the meantime, I can walk you through some slides, and then we get back to that later in the keynote. Now 2022 Copilot was just auto-completion, yet it felt already magical. You could type the first line, and it would complete the body of the method. Bubble sort, unit tests, even complex algorithm, downloading images. The original Copilot was like seeing the future. And even with just auto-completion, it was clear that coding had changed. Back then, in 2022, Copilot was already writing 40% of the code in those files that was enabled, right? Almost half. And I was on stage here and I claimed that in 5 years it's going to write 80% of the code. And that number shook people. I remember coming off stage and walking through the expo and people are like, really, 80%? How is that going to be possible? It sounded unbelievable, a little bit scary, maybe a little sci-fi. But here's the wild thing. This was all 5 months before ChatGPT had happened. We as developers, we were ahead of the curve of AI. There was no precedent. There was no track record for any of this. Some developers were skeptical for sure, before they had tried it out. Is that ever going to work? Many of you were excited after using it. The feedback was incredible. And also really funny. I think Goose is a reference to Top Gun, is that right? People called it mind-blowing, they called it truly amazing. Whatever, the feedback was, we were excited about a new center of gravity for software developers. And within 6 months, Copilot hit already 1 million signups. And then in November 2022, ChatGPT happened, and it showed us that we can have meaningful conversations with AI. And so naturally, next, we added chat to Copilot. We brought Copilot into the CLI, into the terminal. We added voice support. And all of a sudden, anyone could code with natural language. In German, in French, in Spanish, in Hindi, in Bahasa, in almost any major human language. And this isn't just a marketing statement. We're here in Berlin. I'm sure some of you have kids at home. A 6 or 7-year-old in Berlin doesn't speak English, and they don't want to learn English just to learn coding. They're fascinated by Super Mario Bros. Or Minecraft. And what do kids want to do? They want to build their own games, and they can now start coding just by typing some German prompts. That's the real magic of Copilot in AI. You type a prompt, and you get some working code. You highlight some code and ask Copilot to explain it to you in your language. You have a bug, you ask Copilot whether it has an idea to fix it. You know what? If it doesn't get it right, that's okay. We don't get it right all the time either, right? Like how often do you have pair programming sessions with somebody next to you and they don't know exactly the answer? How often did you copy code off Stack Overflow and it didn't work right away and you had to keep going, keep trying, trial and error? And the best thing is, if you tell the AI it was wrong, it even apologizes to you and says, I'm sorry, let me try this again. And we grown-ups often have a harder time with realizing this loop than kids, right? Kids keep asking, and the good thing is AI has way more patience than we as parents. A year after WeAreDevelopers in 2022, I was on stage at Web Summit in Rio de Janeiro, May 2023, and we had an idea. I would do the whole keynote as a live coding session, and I built Snake Game. If you ever had a Nokia phone, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So in 15 minutes live on stage, I just used Copilot and Copilot Chat to build Snake Game. I frantically copied code from the left side to the right side. And you can see I had the web inspector open because I think I wanted to see if it works even on a mobile phone. It was all of a sudden possible in front of an audience like this to code only with natural language, and it worked. And the momentum in the industry just kept going. This is from Sequoia, one of the really large venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, in September 2023. This is almost 2 years old, from a post titled Generative AI Act 2. And the AI landscape has expanded with such a rapid pace. The amount of logos on the slide has more than doubled since. And I argue within this space, AI code generation, AI developer tools is the most successful area. Whether it's startups like Cursor, Devin, or Windsurf that have gone from 0 to hundreds of millions in revenue. Whether it's existing startups like Replit and Vercel that have extended their feature set with AI code generation. Whether it's the model companies, Anthropic, Google, or OpenAI, they all are now also software developer companies. We have never seen such an explosion of companies in the developer space. And the space itself has become a true center of innovation. So if we just go back to Copilot, from auto-completion to chat, to multi-model choice, to multi-file edits, to now support of model context protocol or MCP, to coding agent, AI code generation tools now cover the whole software development lifecycle. But make no mistakes, on the slide, we as developers are not only using the tools, the agents on the right side, we're going back and forth on that spectrum. Right? Because as developers, we still want to be able to touch the code. We still want to be able to ask the question. It's a spectrum of tools that you use depending on what you're doing in that moment and based on your experience on what is the fastest way to get the solution, right? Just like a contractor at your house, they're not always using the electric tool if they can just get it done with a wrench or with a screwdriver themselves real quickly. And not only the features in this coding space have expanded, adoption has expanded too. From 1 million developers in 6 months to now over 15 million developers in Copilot. And that's just the share, that's just the number for my product, right? The space itself is probably 50% larger than that. From that initial demo here on stage to widespread adoption in the enterprise and in many, many startups, and through many startups, AI has changed how we as developers do our work. In fact, I believe we have seen the biggest change in those last 3 years to software development than we have seen since the invention of the PC. If you think about what has the PC done to software development, right? Before the PC, before the Commodore 64 on my desk, developers had to book time on a mainframe. They had to go, in the university campus and find a slot on Saturday evening, 6 p.m. to try out their code. And when they were done with their session, they went back on paper and tried to figure out how to fix the bugs, right? And all of a sudden, everybody could have a computer on a small TV in their living room or in their, I had it in my kids' room, and start coding all the time, right? That was the innovation that the PC brought to the software development lifecycle, or the inner loop, as we call it. With AI, we went the next stage of this. Before AI, you had to figure it out all by yourself. You had to go on Google or into books and magazines even before that. And now with AI, you can just ask Copilot a question. You no longer have the context switch between your IDE and the browser. You can stay in this magical flow state. And if you all think about how your ideas develop in your heads or in a GitHub backlog, they're all written in natural language, right? You're not waking up with code in your head. Your job is to convert idea into code. And so I believe these advantages through AI models, through Copilot, are compounding at a really rapid pace. And the next thing that's already happening in our industry is the rise of the software engineering agent, or SWE agent. And it takes this idea of Copilot, of AI, to the next level. It's no longer just prompting, getting an answer, and then figuring out what to do with this answer. You give it a task and let the model reason over that task. It goes through what's called a chain of thought. And you allow it to call tools just like you would call tools on the command line. And you allow it to call into your engineering stack, your Mongo database, or your Kubernetes cluster with MCP, model context protocol. And this loop, that's what we call an agent. You give it a task, you let it run for a while, very similar actually to CI/CD, and then it outputs something to you, and you know what? Then you still have to review all that code. So if somebody tells you you no longer have to understand the programming language, I call bullshit. It's not true, because you have to validate what the agent actually did. And there's currently 2 types of agents. We call them agent mode and coding agent. One is synchronous, the other is asynchronous. The synchronous one sits in your IDE. You give it a task, and then you watch it reason. You watch it outputting human language and programming language intermingled. You see it creating files. Whenever it wants to run a command in the terminal, you have to click approve, because otherwise it might just delete everything, because it figures out that's actually better for your future. And then when you are done, you review all that code, you try it out, and then you submit a pull request, right? That's the synchronous mode. And when you shut down your laptop, you're off work, and your agent is off work too. The other version is the asynchronous version. That's the one I started demoing earlier, where you assign a task to it, and just one of your team members, it goes off and it does that work. In a virtual machine, it works in parallel to you. And that's really fascinating, because I can not only assign one of these tasks to Copilot or the agent, I can assign a dozen of them, right? And then so I can offload all the work that I don't want to do, the boilerplate, the unit test, the documentation, the refactorings, the updating my dependencies, all those things that keep you away from your actual feature backlog, right? That's the real power here, and then it comes back with a draft pull request. And of course, you have to review this draft pull request. And you have to give feedback just as you would with one of your team members. Anyway, enough of the slide where I thought we show you all of this in a demo. And so let me invite Christopher back on stage, this time for real, not to help me enter the password, and show you how all this works.
Thank you. All right. So when Thomas was up here in 2022, 2023, he built out a snake game. So it seems only fitting that we go in and we add in a snake game. So let me actually just prompt Copilot here. Let's add a snake game. And I'm going to let Copilot get to work here. Now, what's going to be a little bit different here is the fact that I already have an existing arcade. That typically when we're creating software, we're not working in a green field. We have an existing environment. So in this case here, I've got a main menu. Everything needs to be registered. I've got a base class, and I've got some tests. And you'll notice, of course, that all of this is working. I could stand up here and start playing Brick Breaker. OK, I don't want to get too distracted. And now let's go in and see what our agent is doing. And our agent is going to behave very similar to a human developer. That as I highlighted, we have a main menu, we have a base class, and we have our tests. And if I was tasked with this, if I'm new to the team, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to start by exploring the project. Let's see what's there, get a little bit of background information, and then turn my attention to writing the code. And we can see Copilot doing exactly that. That we can see it read through the base game. It looked at an existing game for a little bit of background. It found my main menu, my entry point. And now it's going to go in and create that snake game. And we see that it's already generated that code for us. Now it needs to be registered inside the main menu. I can see it's updating our main menu here. Give this a moment to go ahead and do its thing. And then once it's registered everything in the main menu, it's then going to turn its attention to the unit tests. And this is really one of the great places where our agent mode is going to shine. Because it's not limited to just writing code, that it's also able to access the command line and run commands from there. So it'll be able to run the tests, see whether or not they pass or fail, and should they fail, it will then be able to heal and implement those fixes from there. Now, this is one of those moments where it always takes just long enough to make you nervous, and then it will go ahead and work. And I'm going to give this just another moment here to see if it's going to finish out our main menu. And if not, I'm just going to stop it and tell it to keep going here. Moving your mouse makes it go faster. All right. Let's just go ahead and stop that. Let's continue. There we go. So you'll notice, and this is one thing that I really love about chat, is that it's going to continue that conversation. Now, what I did is I said, let's continue. I didn't say, let's continue adding the snake game. I didn't continue on beyond that. All I said was, let's continue. And it was able to look at that prior context and build or continue from there. So now it's going to add in the appropriate calls into our main menu. Now, we'll give this just a second here to keep on doing its thing. It's taking the long route today. Demo speed is inversely proportional to the number of people watching. There we go. Now it's going to create my test file for me. Give this a moment. And then once it's done that, it will go ahead and automatically run our tests. And what we should also see is this, is inside my project, I have a couple of scripts that I've created to both launch the game, but also to run my tests. So it should actually take advantage of those scripts as well and run my tests. There we go. So let's go ahead and run the tests, make sure that everything is working. You'll notice that it did run my tests. It's installing everything, running my tests, and now we have one failure. This is one of those rare moments where I actually am glad that I got a failure in a demo. Because now what we're going to notice is that Copilot picked that up. It said, hey, we need to fix the issue. Let's go ahead and fix the test. It will implement the fix. It'll go ahead and run my tests again. And with a little bit of luck, there we go. Everything succeeds. All tests are passing. Let's go ahead and try to run the game. It launches our game. There's our snake game. And that's OK. It's not going to launch that first time. That's all right. So here's what I'm going to continue to do. This is live demoing. I'm just going to copy that bit of code and then just say, hey, getting this error, and we'll paste that in. OK. And so now it'll go in, take a look at everything. It should be able to find the error. It'll implement the fix, and then go ahead and rerun my game for me. You can actually see it implemented all of my code. And it's going to look through the rest of my snake class just to make sure that everything else looks good. So it found my snake segment, found my food, sees the issue with both of those. And now it'll go ahead and update those as well. And this is, again, very much acting like that developer of, hey, I've got a problem. Rather than just focusing in on that, it actually took that next step, went to the rest of the file, looked for any other potential problems, and found those. It's now going to fix those. And now let's go ahead and rerun the game. There's our snake game. Still failing out. Let's see. I'll just paste in the error here and let it fix that. I will say, I did run this yesterday. Everything worked flawlessly the first time yesterday. Every single person who's ever done a demo has been there. All right, I'm going to give this one more shot here, and then I'm going to leave that there. Give this a moment. Again, moving the mouse makes it go faster. All right, what is my new error? OK, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to paste that into the background. I'm going to let agent mode work there. And I instead want to turn my attention to that issue that Thomas had sent off to Copilot to let Copilot do its work. So this is Coding Agent. And as Thomas mentioned, Coding Agent is built to work in the background. And it's perfect for those types of menial tasks that are important, but we don't necessarily want to be spending our valuable time on, like migrating those tests. So what we notice here is a pull request. And when I bring up that pull request, and I scroll on down, what I'm going to see is a full report of everything that Copilot did here in the background. Now, we'll actually use this pull request to give me information as it's working. So if I had pulled this up while it was still working, it would actually have a checklist. It would show me its plan of attack and show me where it currently sat. I'll come back to you in a second there, Snake Game. And if I continue to scroll on down, I can see little bits of information, and I can also see the session. And this allows me to see exactly what it did behind the scenes here. And so if I start scrolling on down, I can see, again, it behaved an awful lot like a human developer. That it started off by exploring the project, checking to see what was already there, creating the code, and then running the tests. And if I get all the way down towards the bottom here we go, I can actually see it ran all of those tests, and all of that was successful. So if I sneak back up here, and let me go back to this pull request, and let me copy the branch name, and let me make sure that this is opened up. This is just a code space here. Give this a second, and grab that branch. Fetch, get checkout, and allow, and PyTest. Oh, that's OK. That's all right. That was actually an error I was expecting. Just ask chat. Boop. And boop. There we go. All right, and this will actually give me the command to install the GX packages that I need here. There we go. OK, and now should be able to run my PyTest. Oh, come on. I know what I'll do. I'll do that locally. OK. I'm going to do it this way instead. All right, let's go back to our snake game. And our snake game isn't going to work. OK. Let's git fetch. Oh, all right. What's going to be the easiest way to do this? OK. OK. Let me see if I can fix that snake game real quick. I'm going to give this one more shot. I'm determined. OK. In the meantime, on the PyTest, we can actually see all of the changes that it made. We can actually see it generated brand new tests using PyTest and did everything as we would have expected it to do. It did, in fact, run all those tests locally inside of the container. All of that passed successfully. So all of that is really good. And now coming back to our snake game here, we'll give this one more shot. And move our mouse. Our anticipation is building.
Let's relieve you.
You saw it work yesterday.
It's okay. We relieve you. Did a great job, man. You know, he's actually making a good point that I'm going to make in my slides in a minute. If anyone ever tells you that AI is replacing the developer, just show them this demo.
Code gods are not with you. But it's a great example how you can actually work with it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, vibe coding only works until it doesn't. And then you still have to understand what the hell is this on the command line? How do I fix this error? And probably he would have been way faster just going into the file and fix the typo or whatever caused, you know, the bug that was preventing this button click from working. But as you saw, there is a future where you can get a lot of things done without writing code, by writing human language, by writing specification, by knowing how to stitch these things together. Over the first part of the keynote, I assigned a task to the coding agent, and it did all that work by itself, sparing me from migrating, you know, from one testing framework to another. And then Christopher spun up the agent node in VS Code to add Snake Game, you know, to his arcade, and I'm sure he's now frantically behind the stage, trying to fix that error so he can actually play Snake Game. This is, you know, where we see, you know, the world of software development going, that you're switching between coding and interacting with agent. In fact, you know, this is where we see the future transforming into. On the left side today, we have often one developer and one agent interacting like Christopher did. Soon it will be one developer with a bunch of agents, you know, 3 or so, a coding agent, a code review agent, a security agent, and over time they will be able to interact with each other. You know, one agent might find your exceptions in Sentry, file a GitHub issue, and then the coding agent picks it up, and only then you actually have to review the code. And the final stage here is hybrid organizations, organizations of humans and agents working with each other, collaborating in a way that we have never seen before. In 2022, when I was on the stage here, I predicted that back then, in 5 years, AI will write 80% of all code. And as you could see in the demo earlier, and in many other such demos on the internet over recent weeks and months, when an agent is used to its full potential, it can actually write way more than that. All you write is a human language prompt. In fact, you know, Christopher in its demo, whether it's failed or not, didn't write a single line of code. So we are not at 80%, right? If you know how to prompt it right, it's actually 100%. And we're here 3 years later, not 5 years. So I'm going to change my prediction. I think we're heading into a future where 90% of our code is written by agents. Just like 90% of your applications today are very likely open source code, right? Open source libraries like React, Ruby on Rails, Docker, Kubernetes, the Linux operating systems, all those we've already accepted that we're relying on the shoulder of millions of developers around the world. And going forward, we're going to rely on the work of many agents around us. But here's one thing. That doesn't mean that we don't have a full workday anymore, right? Like, raise your hand if you don't have anything to do at work. If you have an empty backlog and you're just waiting for somebody to give you feedback of the feature to add. I can tell you at GitHub, our backlog goes back until 2016. And it's not that we don't want to do that work. It's that we have so much work to do that we're longing for the 10% to be more coding again and less of that other stuff, right? That's what this is about. 90% means I offload more work to the agent, so I have more time for my 10%, which is still an 8-hour workday. AI is not going to take your work away. It gives you back time so you can actually do the thing that you love doing. And if you remember the first few weeks and months when you started coding, wasn't that the most joyful experience? Wasn't that so much more fun of trying out building something instead of going through an endless backlog from your product managers and from your customers and the security team and all the people that are adding stuff to your day-to-day? And it's funny to see these headlines, right? It's like, I see these all the times and I get asked in the press, when is AI going to replace the developer? And I'm like, never. The AI that we have today is powerful, they're advancing really quickly, but there's one thing they're not. They're not you. They're not creative. They're not able, to figure out what's next for your product. They're not able to understand your business model, your vision, your mission. And being a developer was never about how fast you can code. That's at best the vanity metric for some competition, right? Being a developer means taking an idea and converting it into software. That process, of taking a big complex problem, breaking it down into small pieces, you may say Lego pieces, right? And assembling them to actually get to that idea, that's the job of the developer. And now we have a superpower, and that superpower is called agents. And in fact, this is a survey that we did with one of our customers, and the customer asked their developers, compare the use of Copilot with a superpower. 52% said Copilot makes them faster than a speeding bullet. 16% said it gives them X-ray vision. 15% said it lets them leap a building in a single bound. And it's, I think, pretty timely. Yesterday, the new Superman movie came out. So I really mean it when I say always. To all of you here today, to all the students that are questioning whether they should study computer science or not, there's never been a more exciting time for software developers than today. There's never been more opportunity with a small team to build something amazing. And we have been through these changes before. I mentioned the mainframe to PC transition earlier. There was the books and magazines to internet transition. There was the, mailboxes to forums to GitHub and Reddit transition, right? And then Stack Overflow. With every wave, we as developers have become a little bit more productive. And AI is that next part of what I call the developer odyssey, of our constant push to make ourselves more productive. And now we're going to have an orchestra of agents, and we are going to be the conductor, because no orchestra can play without that conductor. And because of that, we won't have less developers. We will need more Christophers. We will enable more Christophers because they can all learn with human language. Last year at GitHub, we set ourselves a goal, a mission, a winning aspiration of enabling 1 billion developers around the world. That doesn't mean 1 billion professional developers. Just like because you learned math or physics in school didn't mean you became, a mathematician, right, or a physicist. But it means if you want to create software, if you want to learn how to build software, if you want to create, an app to track the allowance of your kids, now you can. And we're heading into a world of 1 billion developers with 1 billion agents, all collaborating and building the world's software together. On this stage in 2022, I ended my keynote saying, the world has won if we generate happy developers. Today, this couldn't be more true. It's not agents for the sake of technology. It's not agents for the sake of corporate profits. It's agents for the sake of developer happiness. The world has won if we generate happy developers. Here's to building a happier world. We are developers. Thank you.